I'm Egbert, the owner of this station. Check out my website at egbert.com. That's EGGBURT, egbert.com. Now it's back to Brad and John. Check out their website at bjshow.co. The BJ Show? Come on, guys. Anyway, here's B and J.
John has the story about the Lifetime Fitness on our last break. By the way, if you're listening to this on replay, either on the podcast or on YouTube, we do this show live on a radio station. Yes, a real honest good radio station. Egbert, E-G-G-B-U-R-T, egbert.com is the radio station, 104.5. And you can listen live every weekday morning between 7 and 8. Last break, we ended up with the story of Lifetime Fitness, a dude who's prancing around the women's locker room, and he has an ID that says he's a woman. And the Lifetime Fitness people are going like, hey, what do we can't do anything. His ID says he's a woman. Justin Sparks, is he retired now? Well, he was with St. Louis County Police, wasn't he?
Well, he's not a police officer anymore. I'm guessing he does some kind of security consulting or whatever you want to call it. Yeah, I don't know how old of a guy he is, but he represents the Wildwood area out there in the Ellisville area. Him
and his uncle used to do a show on 97.1. I don't know if I told you that or not.
You have, and remember he replied to our tweet, so we've covered this extensively.
Right, okay. So the interesting thing is the international story yesterday was the story of the Olympic boxing match between Algeria and Italy, where the Algerian boxer supposedly was born a male and went through some kind of treatment. There's various things. And the interesting story is the International Boxing Association, the IBA, banned this person from competition, but the IOC, the International Olympic Committee, let this person in boxing. And the match, yesterday was what did I say? Albania or what? No,
it's Algeria.
Algeria. My mind just went south there, which happens all the time lately. When you get into your 80s, ask Joe Biden, he'll tell you. Anyway, the history was that the Algerian fighter punched the Italian fighter, and these are women, quote unquote. The one is a woman, the other one they say is not a woman, and with so much force that the Italian woman, after 43 seconds, essentially threw in the towel, said, I can't handle this, I'm going to die. And there's all sorts of controversy about the fact that the IBA claims that they did a research on this particular person, what's called a person, and that they had XY chromosomes, that's the male chromosome, isn't that? Isn't
it
that?
is, yep.
So, and here we go. The thing with the dude or whatever he is prancing around the locker room at Lifetime Fitness. I don't understand this. I really don't. I mean, is it to the point where, especially in the athletics, is it to the point where these guys can't win as a man, but they can win as a woman? Is that the motivation? Is that, like, if you go back to the Riley Gaines thing with the Leah Thomas thing? I mean, is that the motivation?
I don't think so, Brad. And it would be fun to say that a lot of these men just want to win a medal or just want to win a competition. But I think that we've incentivized people we've incentivized bad behavior in the name of being a hero. You and I, who are, I guess you would call us armchair football fans. So, for example, I used to watch the NFL every week until all the Black Lives Matter protest stuff, and it got to be too much for me, so I stopped watching the NFL. But you and I would not know the name. We would not recall the name Colin Kaepernick, at least I wouldn't, if he hadn't decided that he was going to be anti-police and talk about how terrible America is. So suddenly, a guy who was a halfway decent quarterback and then couldn't get an NFL job because he just wasn't very good at being a quarterback anymore, suddenly he's a hero and people buy Colin Kaepernick jerseys and he becomes, a sports legend in some circles. I think a lot of these folks just want to be a D-list version of Colin Kaepernick. And I think they want their fame and they want the national media and the global media to applaud them and say, so brave, the first transgender fighter to beat the heck out of a woman in a boxing match. And I think that's the incentive, Brad.
Well, if you know what Title IX is all about, and if you know the whole idea behind titles, that's essentially groups of legislation on the federal level. And Title IX is something that came about, 40, 50 years ago? Would that be about right for
Title? Something like that. Yeah.
Title IX. And if you know before then, if you went to most universities, there were all these athletic teams for the men, but they weren't for the women. You had various, you had swimming for the men and tennis for the men and this and that for the men, but no women. And Title IX essentially came along and said, okay, you can't have that. You have to have equal representation. Now, there are obviously some sports where you can't do that. You can't do that in football because of the fact that it's just it just won't work. There are women who play tackle football, but that's a very, 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 very small minority. But there are a lot of women who are extremely good at basketball. We can see that with Caitlin Clark, who came out of essentially a Title IX program. And the whole crazy thing about this is the Biden administration has rewritten Title IX, where essentially if you just declare you're a woman, you're a woman. And I see... As the father of a daughter, I have 3 sons and a daughter. My daughter was on the dance team, and it wasn't like she played any sports. But once again, the dance team was all women, okay? Now, on some colleges and some universities, there are men who are on the cheer team. Matter of fact, are you familiar with, I keep seeing these videos, they keep coming up my video feed. Are you familiar with Weber State? Have you ever heard of Weber State?
Yeah, I have heard of Weber State, yeah.
Okay, Weber State, I believe, is a state university. Is it in Utah, I believe it is? Isn't that where it's at?
I don't know. It's a small school, yeah.
Okay, they are like one of the prominent, schools in the country for cheer. Now, you go like, okay, cheer, what do you stand, rah, 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 kick him in the knee, rah, 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 Rass, kick him in the other knee, that kind of stuff. They do, and what they do is, it's incredible. Like these videos where it's a dude, and the dude looks like, he looks like a professional wrestler, and he takes the woman and throws her up in the air and does all these crazy stuff, like she does backflips and ends up in his hands and does all this. And I'm going like, holy cow. First off, incredible athleticism by the woman. And once again, incredible athleticism by the man, because of the fact that, even though these women are not, large women, how many of us could take a woman and pick her up and throw her over our head?
Oh yeah, I like where this is going, Brad. Keep going.
And have
Can
her,
you say it a little slower?
And have her feet land on her hand, and then she essentially does a flip, and she does a 180, and she goes in upside down, and she's now, her hands holding up her hands. She's upside down, being held up by his hands, and then he throws her back in the air. She does a triple backflip. I'm going like, holy cow, this is incredible. But the thing about it is that in this respect, this is to me a perfect example. It only works when the dude is the big strong guy on the bottom who is throwing the woman up in the air and catching her and doing all these things with handstands. And if you reverse that procedure, it don't work. You get what I'm saying? If it's a little...
I do. Well, I get exactly what you're saying. And it was only 2 days ago that you talked about Pete Buttigieg being the bottom. But now you're saying a weak, effeminate man should not be a bottom. So I think we're giving mixed messages here, Brad.
John. Okay,
so you're saying Pete shouldn't be on the bottom because he's delicate and he's a little bit wispy.
Let's just move on. Okay, John's going to...
Thank you. That was the goal. Go ahead.
John's going to take that in a certain direction. Okay, you know who Sage Steele is?
No.
You don't know who Sage Steele is?
You don't know who Sage Steele is? I don't.
Sage Steele is a woman who was on ESPN for a long time and essentially got booted off ESPN because she's a conservative. And what's interesting is she's a black lady, okay? So she's a conservative black lady. And if you know anything about sports, the sports media is like probably 90 to 95% progressive, liberal people. Almost, if you listen to, what's interesting, if you listen to 97.1, almost everybody on that station is a conservative. If you listen to ESPN 101, or just listen to ESPN, the network, probably 85 to 95% of the people on the network are liberal Democrats, okay? Sage Steele got essentially booted off of ESPN because of the fact that she was... there's a lot of political beliefs that are being thrown around in ESPN, and she was arguing with some of the people, and ESPN people didn't like it, Disney didn't like it, so they fired her. Okay, she did an interview, which I thought was interesting, and once again, she is a black woman, and she did an interview specifically about we talked about this yesterday, which happened Wednesday, the National Association of Black Journalists, and we played the clip where the ABC reporter just Donald Trump comes across the stage, sits down in his chair, and she just opens up, with like, a facade, or what is it? What do you call it? There's a term when you open. Well, there's another one. If you fire all sorts of guns at the same time.
Salvo.
Well, there's something else with an F. Okay, there's something else with an F. Let's call it a salvo, okay? And she said, which I think was interesting, she said, this is the problem with journalism today. And she gave an interesting example. She said that if you go into a store and you're returning something that doesn't fit for whatever, you don't go in and go, hey, you know what, this doesn't fit, give me another one or give me my money back. You walk in and you go, hi, how are you doing today? Hey, fine. Look, the reason I'm here is I bought this the other day, and you know what? I got it home, and it's, insert excuse here. It's not my color it's not my size. I didn't really like the fabric once I, took a look at it. Is there any way you could change this or give me my money back? My money back, okay? I'm thinking to myself, okay, she's exactly right. And think about it for a minute. By the way, I have to tell you something in a minute. I'm a fan of pickup lines, but you can take that the next direction where John is a single guy. If John goes into a bar and he doesn't go up to a woman and go, hey, my place or yours, because the woman's going to go, whoa, how dare you? But if he says, right. But if he walks up to her and starts, hey, boy, it was hot today. Man, my air conditioner went out in my car, and man, and you start, I know people used to sell Mary Kay. It's called warm chatter. Have you heard that term before? Warm chatter?
No, but I can use context clues to guess what it is.
Okay.
Yeah, or also known as pacing.
Right.
You comment on the environment, you establish the fact you see the world the same way, and then you move from there into an era of persuasion.
Right. So Sage Steele essentially is provoking Trump right from the get-go. And the interesting...
Now, Sage Steele is provoking?
No, I'm sorry. Sage Steele is saying that the ABC... I'm sorry.
Okay, yeah, I got it.
Sage Steele is saying the ABC reporter is provoking Trump from the get-go. And once again, this is Sage Steele, who is a journalist. I think she has a journalism degree in the whole bit. She's essentially saying, that's just not the way you do things. Which I'm thinking to myself, I keep saying that all the time, don't I, John?
Yeah, of course. You do.
You don't, I get what your point is. I get what your bias is, but you just don't, hey, babe, let's go to my place and have sex. You just don't, maybe if you went into a bar and said that to 100 women, you might find one that might, okay, let's go. But 99 of them are going to go, dude, get out of here. Or they're going to report you to the bartender, or they're going to go over and get the bouncer. See that guy who's harassing me? And you're going to have, a hand catch you by the belt loop, another hand catch you by the back of the neck, and you're going to go out the door horizontal. Get what I'm saying?
I do, yeah. And that's, by the way, that's why I don't pick up women outside the Lifetime Fitness locker room. Because, as you mentioned, Brad, there are some twig and berries in there, and you just never know. And I'm not doing a pants check. I'm not going to do a cup check. I'm not going to take a fist to the... Well, anyway, go ahead, Brad.
You're not going to do the Donald Trump thing, right? Okay. Should we stop at that point? I think...
Back on track, Brad. Brad, you just distract me so much. I'm having a serious conversation, and then you just talk about a cup check.
Well, but
like when you hit a guy in the genitals to see if he's wearing a cup.
Thanks, John. And thanks for amplifying that. I would never do anything like that. Okay, but sure. The whole point of this is that they, and see, this is what bothers me, is they have it in for Donald Trump. And, and she went on to say, which is interesting, she says, this is the guy that not too long ago was the target of an assassination. He got shot in the ear. He could have very well been killed, and she could have started out by saying, Mr. Trump, we were so sad to see that assassination attempt against you, and we're glad you're doing well. No, she just goes right in, and remember, we played the thing. She goes into like about a minute diatribe, and then she asks a question, right? And she's just like, blah, 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 blah. And she calls him a racist. And the interesting thing is, if I would have been Donald Trump, you know what I would have said? The first thing out of my mouth was, I would have said, I'm glad you invited me here to a racist organization, because the National Association of Black Journalists is racist, is because by its name, you have to be black to be in this group. It's racial discrimination. And then the whole thing would have blown up, right? I mean, it was just like, pew, it would have been like nuclear bomb blast. It would have been like Nagasaki over again. You know what I mean?
I do agree with you, but I would also point out a little bit of hypocrisy on your point, Brad, because you used to own a talk station called The Mouth. That's correct.
Right. Yeah, and your point is?
Well, what if you're suggesting that only people with mouths could be radio hosts, right? Like, what if someone had a serious facial injury and they could only be fed rectally? It's like you're excluding differently abled people, Brad.
Okay, I'm trying to get my hands around this, and I'm sort of missing something here. Okay, if they don't have a mouth, how would they talk? And if it was a talk,
why can't they communicate, Brad? Why couldn't they just type their statements?
John, this is called radio, where you unless we have studio cameras, which we don't, you don't see that John's a handsome-looking guy and I look like a frog that just got run over by a tractor trailer. That's the way things are. But
well, my point is, Brad, is that we all discriminate based in one way or another. And if the group of black journalists want to have their own clique and complain about white people, I think they should be able to do that. Now, we couldn't do that, Brad, but we can't even, let's talk as white men. We can't even seem to protect our women from having men flap their dongs around a locker room. So why should we tell black journalists who they can and can't fraternize with?
One quick question, going back on the thing we talked about last segment. Okay, is Justin, that's his name, right? Justin Sparks?
Yeah.
Is he doing the press conference outside?
I think so, yeah. I'm guessing Lifetime isn't inviting him to come in and besmirch their reputation. I'm guessing he's doing it in the parking lot.
And what time is this?
It's at noon, and I was kind of hoping you would show up.
See, John, if Justin Sparks were really, really good at this, you know what he'd do?
What would he do?
He'd drive over to Sauget this morning, and he would recruit about 20 of the dancers, 20 of the women dancers, and he would say,
not the pink slip, because they have a lot more stretch marks and C-section scars. Go ahead, Brad.
He would say, okay, here's what we're going to do. To show how this is not fair, we're going to put our strippers in the male locker room, and we'll see how much they protest.
That's right.
How many guys do you think would protest?
Do you see? Look, strippers are already calling you, Brad. We hear it in the back. I think that's because you walked out on the tab last night. That's probably why you're getting a phone call.
Is that what it is?
Fat
okay.
Tony from Sauget is letting you know that he's up to he knows what your tricks are.
He's going to come get me. Okay. I do know Fat Tony, by the way. Okay. You think I'm kidding? I do know. And isn't Fat Tony one of the guys in NSYNC?
Yeah, Joey. Yeah, Joey Fat. It's Joey Fat One.
That's right, Joey Fat One. Okay, we have to take a break. This show's going off the rails in a hurry.
Thanks for checking out the Brad and John Show podcast. This segment of the show is brought to you by John Combest's book, Stalking, Harassment, Internet Trolling, A Guide to Recovering and Rebuilding After Online Attacks. It's a great reference if you've ever been the unfortunate target of a social media attack. It's available on Amazon. Just search John Combest. That's Combest. John Combest, and the book will show up in your search results. Now it's time for another segment of the Brad and John Show. Can you handle it?